Welcome, one and all, to the TELLABRATION 2023. This event celebrates the art of storytelling and is celebrated worldwide in November. Thank you for joining us in our celebration. This event was created in 1987 by Pa Pinkerton in Connecticut, and their little event grew every single year till today. You can find TELLABRATIONs in almost every country of the whole world. We're sponsored by the National Storytelling Network and Storytelling Association of California. Our emailed flyer that you received, it has instructions for donating to the National Storytelling Network if you choose to, or it will be in our chat. We did already have some input that that particular link for donating wasn't successful, so we'll try and address that in the chat and at the end, or you can go directly to NSN. Thank you. So I'm Marian Ferranti, leader of Delta Wordweavers of Antioch. I have with me Mindy Donner. She's waving. She is one of the participants for the Storytellers of San Diego. And we thank Zoom because this is our 4th year that SAC swap groups are joining forces. Our technical support today is Claire Castell and Sarah Lord. Wave to us. Delta Wordweavers is celebrating its 30th year, and San Diego Storytellers are celebrating their 35th year presenting a TELLABRATION. Oh, let's give everybody a round of applause. That's really momentous. 30 years and 35. This is a curated event presenting 6 selected tellers. All the listeners will be muted, and please turn off your cell phone. At the end of stories, you can respond with rounds of applause and with response buttons. If you're moved by a teller's presentation, you may tell them so in the chat. At the end, you may type public announcements in chat. And before you leave, remember to save that chat for your own use. We're recording straight through. And so if you must eat or drink or leave your screen, please turn off your screen, or we might do that for you because it is distracting. So thank you for that. And thank you again for coming. As stated, Delta Wordweavers is proud to be here for the 30th year consecutive. We haven't missed any years, sometimes with other groups, and many years on our own, for a TELLABRATION. So I chose tellers from some of our earliest years to present today. Anita Gale Jones, along with Ruth Stoddard, told at the 3rd Delta Wordweavers TELLABRATION. And we are going to first welcome Anita Jones to tell about her. In the early 1900s, writing and illustrating children's stories led her to oral tradition storytelling. She's also had work as a freelance writer and is a former fashion model in New York, Paris, and San Francisco. Now she has stretched herself, dedicating herself to extensive research and to write a novel. The Peach Seed is a multi-generational story across time set in 2012 in Albany, Georgia, with flashbacks to the 1960s civil rights movement. And it's an ancestral tale beginning in Senegal, Africa in the 1700s. The family holds a glimmer of hope throughout as a seed, as small as a seed, that can ripple across generations. I love the review from Debutful. It's a website and a podcast to find debut authors. They said, and I quote, "The world in this novel feels so lived in. Readers are drawn in by gorgeous passages about landscapes that dance with all 5 senses." That's what I want to experience. Anita, take us there in your beginning excerpt.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marian, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you to our hosts for the invitation. It's been quite a few years since I've done a TELLABRATION, so it's nice to be here. I'm going to be sharing a scene from the beginning of the novel, The novel was published in August. On August 1st, it came out. So it's still very much a baby book out there trying to learn how to walk and hopefully run and maybe even fly. And it's available wherever books are sold. There's an audiobook which I narrate, and you can also probably find it at your local library. So we're going to be meeting Fletcher Dukes today. He is one of 4 protagonists in this story, and he has lived his whole life. He's a fictional character. He's lived his whole life in Southwest Georgia. And he lives in a widening in the road called Putney, Georgia, which is just below Albany. Albany is another character in the book. It is a southern city running on country fuel. It's divided east to west by the Flint River, and this corner of Southwest Georgia is graced with majestic pecan groves and wildflower carpets buffered by blue skies. It's a region where flip sides coalesce, antebellum and modern, old growth and new wood. It's also a place of long, deep pain, still refusing forgiveness, and yet also propelled by joys and triumphs. In many ways, even in 2012, life here is the same as it was 50 years ago. A patchwork of citizens, from farmers to college students to business people, going about their days as any other, separate and unequal. So Fletcher's property, 7 acres, has been in his family since before he was born, back when a Black man wasn't likely to own a paltry lot, let alone 7 acres. And this land is very close to his heart. He built the 1-story brick house that he lives in, and it sits on 3 acres. A long driveway shot like a red clay ruler straight from Sumac Road into Fletcher's front yard. And if you parked 10 cars along that driveway, bumper to bumper, car number 1 would touch his front porch, and car number 10, his mailbox. In the back section of his property, there's a 4-acre pine forest and a large meadow. And that's where we find Fletcher today. It's a hot day, unseasonably hot for March, and he's on his tractor mowing down some weeds in his meadow. He jiggles in his seat as the old tractor's rhythm makes him jiggle in his seat, and he uses a very nicely starched white handkerchief to wipe the sweat from his neck. If he closed his eyes, the wind in the pines could be waves breaking on a beach somewhere. So Fletcher is there, and he's mowed down the last of the weeds. He looks at his pocket watch, and he sees that he still has some time to take a shower before he drives across town to pick up his older sister, Olga. She is his rock and his inspiration. She's the leader of the family as well as he is. And she's losing her sight to glaucoma. So every week he drives her to the grocery store. And this is the day for their weekly grocery run. So a little bit later, Fletcher pulls his Ford Fairlane into Piggly Wiggly's parking lot. You've probably heard of Piggly Wiggly. I'm surprised how many people know about Piggly Wiggly's. He pulls into Piggly Wiggly's parking lot, and he's grumbling to Olga about a red Volvo wagon hitched to a U-Haul trailer and parked across 3 spaces. Fletcher says, now whoever this is from Michigan ought to park this rig out on the edges and leave the good spaces up front for local folk. Well, Olga said, we have our handicap space no matter what. Now, usually she would have more to say about northern license plates, but as she's losing her sight, she is becoming more and more quiet. And her reticence continues as a pink-faced man joined them, headed toward the doors of the Piggly Wiggly. The man said, yeah, I seen her pull in. She act like she owned the place. And Fletcher said, yeah, I guess they don't teach them how to park up north. And then he added, well, she can't be all bad. She's got Obama Biden in her windshield. And when the man heard this, he quickly shut up and went on into the store. And Olga said to Fletcher, well, you sure did shut him up lickety split with that. So they go on into the grocery store, and as usual, they started in the produce section. And then they turned down the liquor aisle, headed for meat, poultry, fish. Fletcher was out front guiding the cart, and as usual, and Olga was pushing. They walked past a tall woman with salt and pepper hair and skin the color of paper shell pecans. But before they passed her, Fletcher smelled her perfume first. It was a scent that he knew well, but he could no longer name. And every time he smelled it, soft, powdery bouquet, it would make him instantly think of Altavis Benson. They were high school sweethearts, voted the most likely to marry until some stuff happened and she migrated north, he stayed south. And now he's a widower, and here she is, back from his past, standing right in front of him reading a wine label. She had her head bowed, and he could see the smooth skin at the nape of her neck. This is a spot that the women in Fletcher's family called their kitchen. And this woman had a birthmark in her kitchen. It was a little strawberry, almost like a tattoo. And seeing this made Fletcher's heart just throb. So he wanted to rush past and was hoping that Olga wouldn't start talking at that moment. So there they were at the checkout counter, and Fletcher's heart's throbbing, and he's looking at his sister's ATM card in her hand, and he's watching the aisle waiting for the woman to walk past. And then she came toward him, pushing her cart. Actually, she's pushing her cart away from him, and he stepped back to watch her walk in order to confirm what he already knew. "I'll be damned," he whispered. It was like watching a scene from a favorite movie. Her long strides, slightly slewfoot. He was only 4 months older than she, but he felt like a relic in her presence. So she just pushed her cart away, and her denim legs vanished behind a Coke display. And Fletcher thought about walking hand in hand with her when they were in high school at the county fair. And there she was, all of a sudden, stepping out of his past. So as he was thinking about her, he remembered that she was a singer, and she had several albums, and he had all of them in his vinyl collection. So now the Michigan license plates were making more sense to him because all of her albums were recorded in Detroit. If only Olga knew how close they were standing at that very moment to their very own Altavis Benson. When they were in high school, they both worked in the civil rights movement together in Albany, and Fletcher was always walking behind her in the protests to protect her. And they were always together until she had to leave. And now he can hardly believe that he has seen her at Piggly Wiggly. Later, when they were in the car getting ready to drive home, Olga said, "Well, that doesn't happen every day." Fletcher said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Estee Lauder, youth do. I smelled it in the store on somebody. That's an old-timey fragrance. It was everywhere in the 50s and the 60s, but not that much anymore." Fletcher was quiet. He was sitting there with his keys in his hand, staring at the license plates and thinking about Detroit and albums and Altavis. It all was coming together for him. But he didn't know why he didn't say anything to Olga about Altavis as he drove her home. But later, Fletcher would look down through the backbone of this day in search of signs that he had missed. And he would recognize that red Volvo wagon as the calm before a storm called Altavis Benson, walking around his Piggly Wiggly after 52 years. Thank you.
Juanita, you did not disappoint. Scenes and settings. Thank you so much for that journey.
Thank you.
Folks, you can give her praise in the chat. I now introduce Ron Jones, who was part of our 6th celebration. You can now all say you've met a native San Franciscan. Having graduated from Stanford University, he taught theater and sports to the physically and mentally disabled for 30 years, where he garnered volumes of material from those years and current. He found experiences in everyday heroes to honor in writings. 3 of his stories have been made into television specials, garnering an Emmy, Golden Globe, and Peabody for their producers. One book was nominated for a Pulitzer, and another book, the story of a disabled man who was abducted to Mexico, it was honored as the American Book of the Year. His 1969 classroom experiment in fascism, The Wave, has been produced as a feature film. Its book, when he performed for us in 1999, was in 6 languages. Today, it's printed in 23. In today's presentation, Ron's now experimenting with poetry as a form of storytelling in spoken word. He kind of likes it, and it's kind of fun to do. This rant, at times it's intense, but yet it's full of humor. Find that humor and insight into our everyday life. Reminds Ron of a cartoon that used to be preceding a feature film, being both fun and funny with a little gulp at the end. Get ready for a ride with Ron Jones.
Well, first of all, thanks, Anita. I sure enjoyed that love story. I met my wife in high school as well. I am interested as a writer and a poet, how to bring poetry into storytelling. So this is that first attempt. First, I maybe introduce you to my family while we're here. I don't know if you can see that group, but that's the essence of why I write anything. But here's the poem. Why do I feel like Billie Holiday today? Feeling sad, feeling glad in a melancholy way. War in the Ukraine, I'm looking back. Babies dying, mama's crying. Big business making money in coffins, red, yellow, blue. Feeling sad, don't know what to do. Blood red oil on my hands, blaming each other, lost in this promised land. Hope is the victim of our lies. Everybody's tweeting, tweet, tweet, tweeter, tweeter, pie. Thousands of channels to no reality, all about nature on my big screen TV. Being mean to others, it's the game of survival. Easy credit, just shop online. Donald chooses winners. Work will set you free. Get yourself a dinner, KFC. Ice is melting to porno screams. With my PlayStation, honey, I can kill dreams. Homeless in the park, the alleyway, your doorstep under a freeway, cardboard signs full of pain, someone's loved one standing in the rain. Plastic chairs, emergency room, fills up with grief, standing room, voice behind a glass wall. We'll see you soon. Don't you see my baby, my baby, my babies too? Preachers in their pulpits, tongues all ablaze, finding Bible quotes, strangers to haze, stone the homosexual, heretics to burn. One way is truth, only one way to turn. Women in their place, drive out the immigrant, build walls of fear, fire, brimstone. Heaven is for the selected few. Fundamental Christian, Islam, or Jew. The end is near, a second coming. Nothing to lose, no need to worry. Sky is glass, you can see it falling. Gates of pearl, vestal virgins trilling. Rapturous glow. Oh, no, 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 no. Atomic ending. Thank you.
Ron, yes, daily life can be pretty convoluted. So much going on in our life, but a bit of ranting, a bit of humor will help us survive. What else can we do to catch our breath from this crazy life? Some people turn off their TV. But Ron has keep on though. He's got created a special place he goes to right in his own yard. He's made a peaceful garden. I wonder if he has a gnome in his garden. The next story by Ruth Stoddard does have a little man with a red cap and a white beard, but not in the garden, in the house. Ruth Stoddard was a teller for our third celebration held in 1996. She was already well known for her well-crafted stories, having earned 1 degree in folklore. Her passion has taken her throughout the world, teaching and telling in infectious ways. She's published a number of books that teach the tellers. We, the tellers, and we, newbies at one time, have learned so much from her as she had started the Dominican University Certificate in Storytelling program. And we became community, which really supported a little swap group that started having festivals and now is known as the Bay Area Storytelling Festival. Ruth has received the Oracle Lifetime Achievement Award from NSN and more recently a Fulbright grant to teach in Thailand and India. She has not retired yet. She's still offering workshops and performing today for us. Thank you, Ruth. Tell us about that house goblet. Will it really bring me good luck? You're muted. Unmute. Thank you. Still muted. Your video is off. Now your sound is on, but your video is off. There.
Got everything?
Yes.
Okay, typical.
Good.
Sorry,
All
folks.
right.
Thank you all for coming to this celebration that I've been looking forward to. And yes, I brought you a story that is by Hans Christian Andersen, one of his literary fairy tales, but it's not one that most people are familiar with. He wrote a lot of stories for the adults that would stand outside the room when he was telling stories to children or come and stand in the back of the audience. And I suspect this was one of those stories. It's called The Goblin and the Grocer. So would you envision in your mind a neighborhood street with houses on each side of the street and a grocery store on the corner? You can still see grocery stores on the corner in Berkeley and Oakland and San Francisco. And when I was growing up, very often the grocer and his family lived on the second floor above the grocery store. And that's exactly what happens in this story. The grocery store is on the corner, the grocery store is on the corner, and to make a little extra money, they rent out the attic to a student. But there's someone else who lives in that house, the goblin. In Scandinavia, it's good luck to have a goblin living in your home. He brings you the gift of prosperity and good luck. So the goblin is in their house, and the owner of the house only has to do one thing as payment. And that, for this little man with the white beard and the red cap, on Christmas Eve, the owner has to put a treat outside the store or the house, wherever the goblin is. And that treat is always a bowl of porridge with a lump of fresh butter. Well, the story starts when the student was walking into the grocery store. Hello there. The usual, please. The usual. Sit down. And the grocer reached into a barrel and pulled out a sheet of newspaper, picked up a loaf of bread, thick slice, reached under the counter, got a wedge of cheese, chunk of cheese, and then he did something the student had never seen before. He reached under the cash register and pulled out a small book. He tore a page out of it, put it on the counter, wrapped the cheese. Here you are, my friend. The student looked at the writing on that cheese and, grocer, this is poetry. You ripped a page out of a book of poetry? I know that the woman next door, she didn't have money to buy milk and asked if she could exchange the book for milk. And I could see it was the right size to wrap little things like your cheese. So I made the trade. Oh, grocer, I'd like to buy this book. How much is it? You can have it for the price of the cheese. Then I won't have cheese tonight. Thank you, grocer. You know, grocer, you're a kind man, you're a good man, but you don't know anything about poetry. Well, you probably know as much about poetry as that barrel that holds all of your newspapers. And the student laughed, and the grocer laughed. But someone else was in that room, the goblin, and he didn't laugh. How dare that student say such a thing to my grocer? And that night, when the goblin thought everyone was asleep, he went down to that barrel. Is it true? You don't know anything about poetry? No. Of course I know about poetry. It's published in the newspapers all the time. I've been filled with poetry. Oh, now the goblin was really angry. He tore up the stairs to the student's studio, stood outside the door where there was a little strip of light under the door. He peered through the keyhole. And oh, what he saw. The student was sitting in his bed reading that book of poetry by candlelight. And the room was filled with images. There was a waterfall. There were birds and flowers and trees, an elegant lady. It was incredible. It was extraordinary. He stayed until the student closed the book, blew out the candle, and it was dark. The student, the goblin, very slowly made his way down the stairs. And the next night, he was back. And again, it was so elegant, beautiful, incredible. When suddenly there was a pounding on the door. Evacuate! There's a fire! Everyone out immediately! The goblin ran outside and watched the grocer's wife grab her box of jewelry, the most valuable thing she owned. Running down the stairs behind her was the grocer, and he ran through the grocery store. He grabbed his cash register, the thing he loved the most. And then behind him came the student running out. Well, the goblin went up on the roof so he could look out and see what was happening with the fire. And he saw the grocer with his cash register and his wife with a box of jewelry and the student with nothing. The book of poetry. The goblin ran into the student's room and it was there on the table by his bed. the goblin took that book and he ran back up on the roof just in time to see the men that were handing the barrels of water down leave, and the hoses were being wound up. The grocer and his wife were coming back in the store. The goblin quickly ran back, replaced the book, and went to a little corner in the grocery store where he liked to think. I love poetry. I don't want to live without poetry. I think I'm going to live with the student. But then I won't have the bowl of porridge with that lump of butter. I know what I'll do. I'll divide myself. I'll spend 6 months with the grocer and 6 months with the student. And you know, folks, I think that was a very clever thing that goblin did. Isn't that what many of us do? We would love to spend our life telling stories, playing the piano, writing poetry. But we find because our society doesn't support the arts, we have to find something else so that we can go to the grocery store. And that's the end of that. Thank you.
Hey, Ruth. You took that place to happenings with that goblin in the house. Maybe we could get one.
Which
You've reminded us of the importance of the role we play in protecting and appreciating the world around us. And now Mindy Donner from Storytellers of San Diego will introduce 3 more tellers.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. And today we are representing Storytellers of San Diego. It's a nonprofit in the state of California, and we carry out storytelling activities all throughout the county and sometimes the state. And online, we participate nationally and even internationally. So we are so happy to be here, really honored. And thank you, Marion and team and the tellers that preceded us. So our first tellers representing Storytellers of San Diego are Patty Christensen and James Nelson Lucas. And together as a tandem team, they call themselves the Patchwork Players.
Story theater.
Yes. And individually, Patty's a psychotherapist and James is the director of public narrative for the Viking Festival that's held in North County near San Diego. So take it away, tandem tellers.
In the beginning, the sky was very close to the earth.
Or so the tale is told in Nigeria.
It was so close, you could reach up and touch it. And not only could you touch it, you could eat it.
Oh.
These days, the people always had enough to eat without having to do any work at all. They just reached up and took a piece of the sky.
That's right. Women and men, they didn't have to plow fields. They didn't have to plant seeds. They didn't have to gather crops, chop wood, cut food, cook. None of that stuff.
Whenever anyone was hungry, they would just reach up, get some sky, and taste it. And it was really delicious.
Oh, sometimes it tasted like, roasted corn or sweet potato or delicious spicy stew.
And sometimes it even tasted like cocoa plum pudding or chocolate cake.
Oh.
Well, because the people had so much food and it was wonderful, they had a lot of time left to do some of those poetry things. They were creating poetry, telling stories, and making festivals.
Oh, such a good time for everybody. But over time, people began to grow careless with the sky's gift. Sometimes they broke off more than they could eat, more than they needed. After all, they thought the sky is so big. Well, we could eat all we want, and little bits wouldn't be missing. So sometimes they would throw it away.
A little extra,
Mhm.
ever. And they wasted some of the sky.
They thought, the sky is so big it doesn't care. Oh, but the sky did care. The sky watched down and saw the people grab food and then take a bite and then throw leftovers in the garbage. Oh, this made the sky so unhappy. He got angry and resentful. Oh, I have given myself to you, people. You have given you all the food you could have, but you are not respecting the gift. I have seen some of you throwing my gifts in the trash. Oh, you have treated me with disrespect. You've wasted my gifts. And I warn you, if you continue being this greedy, I will leave and go far, far away.
Oh no, the people were shocked. This can't happen. We promise we're going to be more careful. And from that day forward, they made sure to take only in the amount that they could actually eat. And time went forward for a while.
Well, it came time for the greatest festival in the land to celebrate the High Chief. Oh, and people gathered from all around to honor the chief, and everyone was so excited. There was music, the bells rang, the whistles blew, oh, the drum beats and the flutes piped. Everyone danced and clapped and sang and laughed. Oh, it was a beautiful time.
And there was so much food. The people, the chefs of the kingdom, they outdid themselves. They brought down so much beautiful food, and everyone ate their full.
Oh, everybody was so happy. The sky was so generous because it trusted people to take just what they needed. But
there was one woman who she had a reputation that it was never enough for her.
Enough.
Now she loved jewelry, and she had brass and coral bracelets all up one arm. But she wished she had them for another. She had 11 children, but still she felt her house was empty and maybe she could use a few more. But what she especially loved was food and to eat.
Oh, and at the festival, she helped herself to handfuls of the sky. Some taste like mango, some tasted like pineapple. Some she ladled up with a spoon she carried with her. Some delicious sky that tasted like sweet, warm stew. Oh, and she drank it all down, dumplings and all.
And she ate until she was so full. She started waddling home. But then she started thinking, I wonder that slice of the morning sky that's coming up right now, I wonder what that would taste like.
Maybe sweet and honey-like. So she pulled out her spoon and she licked the sky off of her fingers. Oh, she ate chunks and chunks. Oh, she stuffed herself silly.
But then she looked up and she thought, oh, I'm just going to grab a big old chunk. And she reached up and she grabbed out a huge amount and she licked all the way around the edges.
It was enough for her family to eat for a month.
And she ate, but oh, she was already pretty full. And it was clear. She said, oh no, I think I've taken too much sky. I'm going to need some help. And she went and she woke up her husband. Husband, come out. I have this extra piece of sky. You must help me.
Maybe I can have a bite or two, but I'm stuffed that bit. Oh, that's all I can take. Oh.
Okay, we've got to wake up the kids. And they went and they woke up the 11 kids. Kids, come on out here. You have to help. Mama has a big piece of sky.
Yeah.
But they had all been at the festival eating at the children's table, and they had eaten, and they did their best. They ate a few more bites. They started crying and said,
can't take it.
Mom, it's too much. I don't want any more. I'm too full.
So she called all the villagers, the people from all around. Maybe they could help her eat what was left
The
of her.
neighbors, everybody ate a little bit more, but it was going to be impossible. The woman looked at it and said, okay, well, we've eaten some of it. Probably the sky would never know. I'm going to sneak out and hide it in the garbage pit, and it'll not happen. It'll is all right. No one would see.
Ah, but the sky did see. He was looking down and he saw her throwing some of his beautiful gift parts of himself right in the rubbish heap.
Now, the next morning, when the people woke up, they went out to get their normal breakfast.
But
But
the
the
sky
sky-
wasn't there.
It was high up in the sky. Oh, the kids were hungry, but there were no breakfast.
Nothing to eat.
The parents had nothing to eat.
And they all cried out, how will we eat, Sky?
Oh,
How will
sky,
we eat?
what is the
Why?
problem?
Why? And
And
they
the sky looked down and said,
nothing. I warned you.
the sky said, I told you if you wasted food, I would go high up, and I have gone and I will never return down again. No more sky food for you people.
Oh, this was so sad. The people were so hungry, and they realized that they had been disrespectful to the sky, and they began to weep and cry. Oh, and their tears fell down their face and onto the ground, onto the earth. And the earth spoke to the people. Dry your tears. I will feed you. I will feed you all, but you have to learn how to plow the fields and plant the seeds and gather the crops and chop wood for the fires and cook the food and all that you have to do. And remember what you have learned today. Only take what you need.
And the people, well, they were so sad with the sky, but they were determined, and they came forward and they said, yes, we will promise. From this day forward, we will
Never.
work.
Never again.
We will make
Oh, yes.
sure
Very good.
that we do not waste the food
Mhm.
ever again.
Mm.
And so that was the promise that was made
Mhm.
so many years ago.
And to this day, we toil and turn the soil and plant and seed and work for our food and given us to us kindly and lovingly from the earth.
And that is a story from long ago about why the sky is so far away. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Patty and James, Patchwork Players, Story Theater. That was so delightful. And I have worked with kids with that story who did this in puppetry form. And you just brought another element, another nuance or two out of that story that I hadn't quite seen before. That was lovely. So thank you. And you can read about in the chat, you can read about Patty and James' book that you can get on Amazon. I just put it in the chat. Our next teller from Storytellers of San Diego is Arlen Hackett. And Arlen likes to tell and write imaginative stories full of characters that could be from his personal experience or historical or fictional, and might mix some of those characters and situations up. And I know him to be an elegant chef, and he is well known in San Diego for having had his own cooking show. So bring it on, Arlen Hackett.
The title of my story is The Truth Shall Make You Free. Kenny Halliday and I were in grade school together. I was in a grade higher than him. And the time that this story takes place is, I think I was in the 4th grade and he was in the 3rd grade. Now, mind you, we attended a one-room country school in Kansas that never in a single year had more than 16 students. So it was a little bit different, okay? Well, as I remember this particular day, Kenny came to school and he had a tooth that was missing. It was one of his baby teeth. And he was telling, and last night the tooth came out, and I took the tooth and put it under the pillow. And the tooth fairy came during the night and came back with a dime, 10 cents. Now, this was not a tradition in my family. I had no idea what he was talking about. And I said, you know, I have never been visited by the tooth fairy. I've never been given any gifts from the tooth fairy. And then Kenny said, maybe it was because you were a bad boy. Well, I was shocked. You know, what's going on here? So I recalled that my mother said that fairies were only make-believe, that there weren't fairies. So it instantly dawned on me that Kenny still believed in Santa Claus. And consequently, he appeared to be believing in fairies. Well, I discovered the truth about Santa Claus before I ever started school. I decided to say no more. A dime would pay for 10 pieces of penny candy. So I figured that maybe Kenny would give me 1 or 2 pieces of the candy. Anyway, I realized I had been missing out on a lot of pennies and a lot of candy. I went home and told my mother why I asked my mother why I had never gotten any fairy gifts for my teeth being pulled. And she looked at me and kind of giggled. Well, the reason is because you never really seemed to hurt that much. You didn't care. You were very brave. You were very assured when your teeth were pulled. And we never thought we needed to give you a dime or tell you about a truth fairy because you were such a brave child. And I was thinking, I wish I hadn't have been so brave. So I thought, I thought about this. And then I thought, Mom, I think I should tell Kenny that there isn't a tooth fairy and there isn't a Santa Claus. My mother did one of her famous and then she said, do you think Kenny would be upset if you told him that there was no tooth fairy or no Santa Claus? And then I did my little and I said, well, maybe. So I just couldn't quite let it go. Mom, I said, when we were in town a couple of months ago, we walked by the courthouse, so it was a limestone courthouse, and above the entryway, there were carved into the rocks the saying, "The truth shall make you free." My mother had an expression on her face that visually said, I love you, but sometimes I want to strangle you. for a couple of seconds, I believed that she might actually strangle me. Mom finally spoke. Penny assumes that the truth is that there is a Santa Claus and a tooth fairy will bring him gifts. I still say that the truth is the best way you can have a free conscience. And then she didn't say it. She didn't say anything more. And I'm going, And I said, well, Mom, what shall I do? Shall I tell him? And then she said, I can't decide for you. You are going to have to decide for yourself. I stared at her visually and said, Mom, visually, I said, Mom, sometimes I feel like strangling you. I left the kitchen and walked down to the barn and climbed the ladder to the haymow and sat for a moment. And then that was where I went whenever I, needed a place to be private and alone and think. I sat, and then I remembered how I learned about Santa Claus. My brothers and I always passed out the presents from underneath the Christmas tree. And there were presents that there was always, you remember all these little tags that were to and from. So we had presents that were to and from, and I always remembered that there were the presents from my brothers. There was a present from my grandma. There were presents from my parents. There were always a lot of presents, and there was presents from Santa Claus. Usually more presents from Santa Claus. And then on this particular time, I noticed that those little tags, the handwriting from Mom and Dad to Arlen, and the handwriting from Santa Claus to Arlen was the same. And then I also realized that sometimes the wrapping paper for presents from Mom and Dad and presents from Santa Claus were the same. Well, I waited until the next day when no one else was around, and I said, Mom, how is it that you and Santa Claus have the same handwriting? Without a single pause, she looked at me and said, it's because we had the same writing teacher. I can remember and then we both started laughing. And we never talked about it again. Ever. I didn't say anything to Kenny about the Tooth Fairy or Santa Claus. And this, incident happened at the beginning of the school year. And I remember that at Christmas, I don't remember Kenny saying anything about Christmas presents from Santa Claus. It's when you get older, it's a time and age when you reflect, you think about things. Psychologists emphasize that make-believe and games and stories stimulate creativity and imagination. I accept the truth about make-believe. These make-believe things stimulate that creativity. Fictional stories only become a problem when they are passed off as facts. Certain politicians are very adept at that. A lot of years have passed since I got gifts from Santa Claus. As that small child, I rushed first to open the packages from Santa Claus. There would be toys and games and books and records, puzzles, or things to make, always something for fun. From Mom and Dad, the packages were shirts, pajamas, underwear, socks. You know, tearing the bright wrapping paper off of a box and discovering it inside it was a white and orange Tonka truck with little miniature animals. You know, that doesn't quite compare to white, Fruit of the Loom, briefs, and sleeveless top. Well, with age, there is reflection. It is comforting to realize that both the fun gifts and those essential ingredients, those essential things, actually came from the same source: Mom and Dad. Remember, on the courthouse wall, it says, "The truth shall make you free."
Thank you, Arlen. I so love that your mother and Santa had the same writing teacher. And thank you so much. Our third teller from Storytellers of San Diego will be myself. And I have a story, a very old story from Germany, from Grimm's. And it's entitled The Hare and the Hedgehog. And I'll be standing up to tell it, so it might take me a moment to get centered in the screen. Thank you. On a fine, super fine day like today, where the sun was shining and the sky was azure blue, and the buckwheat blossoms were lacy in the fields, and the bees were buzzing about those buckwheat blossoms. On such a day, Mr. Hedgehog came out and he was inspecting his fields. Well, they weren't exactly his fields of turnips, but that's how he referred to them because he ate those turnips and gave his family those turnips. And they belonged to a neighboring farmer. And he inspected, and then he saw Mr. Hare, who was a very dignified, elegant dandy. And Mr. Hare had stepped out, stretching his long legs to inspect his fields. His carrot and his cabbage fields. Now, they weren't exactly his fields. They belonged to the farmer next door, but for the purpose of this story and the fact that he ate them, we'll call them his fields. Mr. Hedgehog called out, "Good morning, Mr. Hare." Ah, and what might you be doing out so early, Mr. Hedgehog?
Well, I was out taking a walk.
What? Is that the best use for those legs?
These legs can do many things. In fact, I will challenge you to a race. and I will provide the prize for the winner. It will be a Louis golden door and a bottle of brandy, fine brandy.
Now, Mr. Hedgehog normally had thick skin, but he was very sensitive about his legs, which were bandy-legged or bow-legged. And he just couldn't take any comments about his legs, which were crooked by nature. And so Mr. Hare took him up on that. Ah, yes, we will have a race. You mean you really want to race these long legs? Well, let's get to it. We'll do it right now.
Oh no, I can't race now. I am still fasting. I have to go inside and have my breakfast, and then I'll have the energy to race you and win.
Oh, then I'll meet you in the field.
Yes, in a half hour.
And so Mr. Hedgehog hurried in, and he found Mrs. Hedgehog, who was washing and drying the children. And you know, this was well before the time of electric washers and dryers, and this was quite a task.
Mrs. Hedgehog, listen to me. Stop everything.
What now, dear?
Well, I'm going to have a race with Mr. Hare.
Oh, what? Have you lost your wits with his long?
Don't say it. Just get my cap and my jacket and put them on and come out with me to the fields right away. And don't ask. This is men's work. And it's no place for a woman to ask questions.
Well, I do think this was the precursor to all the mansplaining that's happened since. And so she got ready and put on the hat and the jacket and went out into the fields. Now, you might not know that female and male hedgehogs are nearly indistinguishable from another, unless, of course, you're a hedgehog.
Wife, listen carefully. This is where we will race, in these 2 furrows. Now, you go to the end of the furrow and duck down. And when Mr. Hare starts running, I'll just run a few yards, and then I'll duck down in my furrow. When he gets to the end, you'll pop up and say, I'm already there. He will be mystified, and he will want a rematch. And then when he gets to the other end, I will pop up. I'm already here. And he will keep running. Okay. And so that's exactly what happened. And Mrs. Hedgehog squiggled down at her end in the furrow, waiting. And then at the top of the furrows, Mr. Hare came. I'm ready to race now, nattily attired. On your mark, get set, go. And Mr. Hare got there lickety-split. And then Mrs. Hedgehog sat up. I'm here already. What? That cannot be. I've never lost a race in my entire life. We must have a rematch. And so, on your mark, get set, go. And this happened 73 times. On the 74th time, on your mark, get set, go. Mr. Hare fell down in the field, never to arise again. And the hedgehogs came out of their furrows. And Mr. Hedgehog took the pulse of the hare. Dead. He picked up the golden louis d'or
and put it in his waistcoat. He picked up the bottle of fine brandy and the missus, and they sauntered home, quite gratified. Now, there can be many morals to this story, but the two that come readily are: one, never consider someone that you think less important than yourself to be insignificant. And don't pick on them either. And number two is always to pick a mate from your own station or your own position, i.e., a hedgehog should marry a hedgehog. Now, I didn't take that admonition, and well, it's been problematical, but you yourself can certainly put a moral to this story in the chat. Thank you.
To Mindy, and she will make some closing comments and thank yous, Mindy.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone who supported this program. It's been a lovely experience. Thank you, Marion and Anita and Claire and the three tellers from Delta, representing Delta Wordweavers, as well as the tellers from Storytellers of San Diego. And now we're going to take, we have some time, and so we're going to use that time well, and we're going to spotlight each teller. And we have enough time for you to say what's coming up in your corner of the world for you that you like to tell people about. We'll do that first, and I think then we can have a open meet and greet for anyone who wants to stay. Thanks so much.
Anybody first? Anita?
Yes.
Let me
Thank
bring
you
you
so much for that. That was delightful, Mindy. I love the mansplaining and the 73 times. You're so energetic. You disappeared, you popped up. You must be exhausted. I have an event next Sunday, actually. It's in San Rafael in the Canal District. It's a really lovely co-op artist studio, and they're going to have me there for a book reading and discussion at I think it's at 5 p.m. I'm going to pop it in the chat. I put it in earlier. I'm going to pop it back in the chat. But it's at 64 Louise Street in San Rafael, and it's called Studio 64. So that's all I have coming up so far. I've come to the end of my 3-month tour for launching the book, and this is a chance for local folk to come to an in-person free event. I'd love to see you.
That sounds wonderful. And I'm so glad you've had a 3-month tour to launch, and you've given us a little taste of that multi-flavored book. Thank you so much, Anita.
You're welcome. Oh, and I also want to mention that we have a book trailer for the novel that's on my YouTube channel, and it's also on my website. It's quite cinematic and exciting, and I like to tell people about that because it's kind of hidden away and not many people see it, but I think you would enjoy seeing it.
I saw it,
Oh,
and it's wonderfully, I did, and then there's also another one with it that says the production of the book trailer, and that was just as interesting as the trailer itself. So go to her site and watch those little clips, whatever, 5-6 minutes long. Just, they're fun. Yeah, they'll get you into that book. Very nice. A lot of work too, more work than we realize.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah.
It was fun though. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for sharing a bit of your world. Yeah. And then our next spotlight teller will be Ron.
I'm just going to add everybody one by one. Is that okay? And we'll have a full list.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you so much. Ron, let's hear from you. What's your next?
You're on mute.
Oh, I'm on mute.
Ron
Ron's
is
on mute. Okay. Ron?
Unmute, Ron. There.
Yeah.
How's that?
Yes.
Good.
My next big event is dinner in about 25 minutes.
All right.
Yay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Why don't you tell people that you just had a film crew in your house and that you were celebrating the end of that.
I think this film crew comes from the original Radio Free America, so they're doing alternative media in Russia. But the most charming thing was I had my granddaughter come over for dinner, and since she's a teacher, they got to meet her. I think that's the most important thing, the next generation and the students that she's teaching.
Thanks so much, Ron. Wow. And happy dinner. And happy dinner. And we'll hear on Spotlight Ruth Stoddard.
Am I muted?
You're
Nope.
good.
You're
You're
good.
good.
Yeah.
Well, my next workshops won't be until this spring in March. If anyone's interested, drop me a line and let me know, and I'll send you the list. And the other big activity I'm doing is I redid a book I wrote 25 years ago, upgraded it, and 100 quotes about storytelling. And so Google it and see if it's something that makes your heart pound.
Bring it closer to the screen.
I need to see the title.
Yeah. Come up closer. There we go. Thank
It's
you.
interesting when storytellers pick it up, they go in the index to see who's been quoted, and they say, oh my God, there's Elizabeth Alice, there's, whatever.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. If you could put the name of that in the chat, Ruth, that would be wonderful. Yeah.
Figure out how to do.
You would do that. Yeah. And then next up are Patty and James, Patchwork Players Story Theater.
Yes. Hello. Yes. Well, first off, our longest running gig is we've been working at Rady Children's Hospital in San Diego for close to 2 decades now.
Oh, wow.
We're artists in residence there. We've got a whole team of artists, visual artists, musicians, and so there's somebody from our team on site most days helping with the kids.
But the wonderful thing, a lot of times people say, oh, that's so nice of you to volunteer.
Mhm.
We actually are paid staff people
Mhm.
in that department. And
Yes.
we love that the hospital says in order for kids to get better, they need not only surgery and therapy and medicine, but they need stories and joy and art. So
As do the parents and staff.
we love that.
Yes.
As soon as we log off here, we're going to head on over to the Twisted Horn Meat and Cider. And we put an invitation. I know many of y'all are far north, but if you're ever down in San Diego, we have, for many years, we have twice a month, we have adult storytelling that happens in the community.
Mhm.
So we're on Sundays, the second Sunday of the month now at Twisted Horn Meat and Cider.
Here for the north end of the county.
And we also have down in the south end of San Diego County that at, what's the name of the place, Mindy?
At the Template, which is in Ocean Beach. It's an eclectic coffee house. And if you ever come down this way, you can go to the north and the south of the county and have storytelling for adults. We say ages 12 and up.
Excellent.
Yeah. Come on out.
We have a wonderful partnership with the Coronado Public Library way down in beautiful Coronado in the south part of the county. We will be doing a 7-week storytelling institute for adults learning storytelling starting in the middle of January.
Mhm.
And part of the culmination of that will be our storytelling festival that will happen on March 16th as part of World Storytelling Day. And we're really excited, and that is a wonderful place. So if you feel like coming down and having a little vacation in March, Coronado is a beautiful place to be able to be, and we'd be pleased to have you come and join us.
All right.
All right. Arlen, here, I'm off. Wait a second.
I
Arlen,
think I'm on.
what do you have coming up?
Oh, I don't know. What comes
Make
along?
it up.
It's kind of interesting. I kind of dropped out of storytelling for a while, and
We're glad
part of
you're
my
back.
reality has been that I have had some problems with word retrieval. And that's, in the function of aging. And I found myself being embarrassed because I couldn't come up with words. And, someone that's been a public speaker and done television and radio and, theater and all that, it's really discouraging, when that happens. And so I kind of, sunk away. And one of the therapies for me has been attending and faithfully writing classes. And so I have found a wonderful instructor through the community colleges. They have a program for seniors, or it has to be 55% of the students have to be over 55.
Nice.
And the result has been that it has really been helpful for me to focus on being able to have the words to speak. And I have to confess, I was pretty proud of myself today that I could do most of this unscripted, because it's really painful when you have the concept in your head. You know the concept, but the words just aren't there. And you have to fish around and make up stuff. And so anyway, it's negotiating all of that, and that has been exciting. So I'm continuing with that of writing, and I'm working on a big memoir thing, and but I kind of like, as you probably saw in the story or heard in the story, I'm focused on stories with purpose. I like stories about social justice. I like stories about environment. I don't want to waste my time just running at the mouth. I want to have something to say. And so that's where I'm at. And who knows what's coming next.
Keep at it.
Yay, Arlen. We're so glad you're back. We
you.
are. We are so glad. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
yeah.
And you're not the only one, Arlen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey.
Others of us are having those moments for sure.
Not the
And-
only one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I announce
Absolutely.
an upcoming event? I'm going to post it here
Yeah.
to
Claire.
everyone.
Sure,
This
it's
is
great.
Claire.
Can
And
you
it's
spotlight yourself and Sarah also as our
Yeah.
tech people? But yeah,
okay.
tell us about your event, Claire Castell.
Is this spotlighted? All right. The Monkey House next weekend, the 19th, Sunday, 2:00, Berkeley. We are calling our group What's Your Story? And it is on a cute little venue in Berkeley on University. And the theme is families are complicated. So we have 5 speakers, and it's real impromptu. It's a sliding scale. Bring BYOB if you want. No credit cards, but it's just a wonderful vibe there.
Thank you. Would you put Sarah Lord on so we can?
Yeah,
I
Sarah Lord.
Where
So-
are you, Sarah? I'm not finding you. Sorry.
And
Yes,
what's coming
okay.
up for you, Sarah?
Can you put yourself
Out of
on,
the
Sarah?
depths. I'm right here.
Oh, there.
She's just here to,
Here
we
you
can,
go. Got her.
I'm not telling, but I am in the process of finishing my second kids book. The first one was about was for kids who are sensitive to loud noises. And the little fellow who I wrote that one for asked me if I would write one about sharing because he was having problems with his little sister. So we're almost finished with sharing.
Mhm. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Marion, do you have something coming up?
yeah. family events. Christmas is coming and other storytelling things. There's no Delta Word Weavers in December, but they do have the genre telling in December. And look on Storytelling Association of California for other events on the calendar. And so let's see, was anyone successful for the NSN donation site? Did somebody make that happen?
I tried.
Yeah, we've had that report, so we'll see about going to maybe directly NSN. We'll try and get some more information and send it to you. We're going to sign off on the recording now. We'll have a little bit of time of meet and greet for the live people, but thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
our YouTube listeners. So thank you for coming to the YouTube with Delta Word Weavers and Storytellers of San Diego Celebration 2023.
Yay.